My name is Jacob Stoops.
And I'm Jeff Luella.
And you're listening to the Page 2 podcast.
This is our podcast about the people of the SEO industry.
We chronicle the real-life stories, experiences, challenges, and advice from some of the most amazing people in the business. In today's episode, we talk with Casie Gillette, Senior Director of Digital at KoMarketing. We discuss how she got her start in marketing working for an online dating site in the mid-2000s, literally handing out flyers in clubs, which actually, in a roundabout way, led to her first SEO job, which is ultimately where she fell in love with it. We also talk about how she got to KoMarketing, how she left and then boomeranged right back, in-house versus agency, her biggest SEO challenges, convincing clients to get recommendations implemented, how she learned to be a confident public speaker, the recent SEOs are assholes kerfuffle, which I find amusing, the importance of SEO training and education, and much more. So get your popcorn ready as we tell Casie's SEO story and have another great roundtable discussion. Hey everybody, this is Jacob Stoops here again with the Page 2 podcast, and I am joined by Mr. Jeff Luella. Jeff, how's it going?
Hey everybody, how you doing?
Good. Jeff, you changed it up that time.
Yeah.
Usually it's like, hey, howdy, hey. Like,
hey, howdy, hey.
Like, what is it, Al Borland from Time. And yeah, that's funny. We're getting better. We're getting better at it.
Yeah, we'll try to figure it out.
And we are also joined by Casie Gillette. How's it going, Casie?
Hey, howdy. I think your Tool Time reference might be overlooked by a lot of people listening to this podcast. Yeah.
Jeff reminds me of Al Borland quite a lot in terms of his side hobbies. And he's a do-gooder. Jeff is a do-gooder, just like Al. So Casie is the Senior Director of Digital at KoMarketing. And is a really awesome guest. I've said this, I think, to a few guests, so I don't want you to feel like you're not at all special because you are special. You
sound like my mother.
Right. Very, very special. But no, when we were setting out when I was setting out over a year ago to do this podcast, and when we kind of sat down for season 2, you were definitely on the list of people that we wanted to talk to. There's a massive, like, we basically want to talk to everybody in SEO, but
you're just really making me feel good here.
Yeah, but you were definitely. I
made season 2. That's exciting. Thank you for having me.
Yes, you made it to season 2.
Me too.
And season 1 was entirely just me trying to figure stuff out live on the internet. So anyways.
Isn't that our job? That's our job as search marketers anyway.
Well, yeah. And it's basically 25 hours of me just gabbing online. And I decided to bring Jeff in to talk with me. So
just for my intro.
Yeah. So in terms of what we're going to be covering today, so we've got a great agenda. First and foremost, we're going to talk to Casie about her background. And then we are going to cover a little bit of SEO news. Surprise, surprise. There was another kerfuffle in the industry. The industry seems to always have a kerfuffle probably once or twice a week that we'll talk about, a little bit of drama. And then at the end of the show, if anybody has stuck around to the end, we're going to talk about building a team and SEO training and how to go about that and the importance of doing that. So definitely a great agenda today. So Casie, the hallmark of the show, kind of like we're superheroes, is the origin story of great SEOs and the backgrounds, the trials, the tribulations. So tell us about yourself. How did you get into SEO, and just who are you?
Yeah, loaded question. I was one of those people who didn't know what SEO was. We didn't know what it was in 2005. I'd never heard of it. I was out of college. I was bartending. Thought, gosh, I guess I should probably get a job in marketing. My parents paid a lot of money for my college education. And a guy that I knew that I had just met through the bar had approached me about this job in marketing. And I was like, okay. Well, what it ended up being was it was an online dating site. But this is 2005. So like online dating wasn't really a thing. And what we had to do was go out to clubs and hand out flyers for this online dating site, which is awful, right? That's just an awful job. But fast forward about 6 months, I had stopped doing that after like a month, I think. And he reached back out and said, hey, I have this job. We have another job doing SEO. Are you interested? And I said, I don't know what that is, but sure. And that was it. I was so fortunate because the company that I ended up working for at the time was huge. There were about 150 people, and it had people like Jenny Hallis and Garrett French and Andy Beal, these people in JP Sherman, these people that as these industry thought leaders. Well, that's where they also started out. So I had these amazing people to train me and to teach me what SEO is. And I think like most of us, I just fell in love. You start doing it and you're like, oh, this is exciting, and it changes and it's cool. And here we are 13, 14 years later, whatever year it is now, I don't know.
I hear that it's going to be 2020, but I'm not sure if that's a new decade or still the same decade. People can't really
I don't know. It's tricky.
So how did you get to KoMarketing? And not only that, how did you kind of climb the ladder to senior director?
Yeah, well, I just run. When I was down in Carolina, I was ready to move back up north. I was like, I got to get out of the South here. So I applied to a job at KoMarketing, actually. And I loved what they had to offer. Well, at the time, there were only 3 other people. So I ended up moving up here. There were 4 of us in total, just really small, which was so fun. It was a whole new experience. I went from this big company to a very small company. And that was really exciting. Now, that happened around 2009, 2007, 2008, right before the economy collapsed. And, we started to lose a lot of, right? We just didn't have a lot of business. And I was approached to go in-house, start an SEO team there, help run the digital marketing team. And so I went and did that for a couple years. And that was really cool. I never thought that I would want to go in-house because, when you're on the agency side, it's so fun, right? There's all these different things always happening. But the opportunity was really great. I got exposure to like running TV ads and radio ads, building a social team, building a community team. So that stuff was really fun. But I stayed in touch with the KoMarketing guys because they were so fantastic. And a few years into that, they said, do you want to come back? I was like, I don't know. And, Derek, who runs KoMarketing, was like, well, we're moving the office downtown. And I was like, oh, okay, now I'm listening. Because, I live in the city and I always had to drive out there. And my whole dream of moving to Boston was I didn't have to have a car and I didn't have to drive anywhere. So he was making my dream come true.
There it is.
Yeah. So, that's, I've kind of, I've been at KoMarketing twice now. I've been back 7 years. So a total of 10. And it's been fun to watch. It's been fun to help grow the company. The guys who run it are fantastic. We have such great people on the team. We're really meticulous about who we hire and how we hire. And I think because of that, we've been able to be successful.
So I'm going to apologize in advance because what I'm hearing is, so you were at KoMarketing and then went in-house somewhere and then back to KoMarketing.
Correct.
Okay, because I was like, wait, you're at KoMarketing, but you're also in-house?
I'm multitasking. Yeah.
Okay. So it seems like the first time you were doing a lot of offline TV and radio, and then a little dabbling in the social space.
Yeah.
And I guess what is so different outside of being downtown different this time in terms of like your role?
Yeah, well, I think one of the things that was really exciting to me was I got to come in and build a team. And that's honestly one of my absolute favorite things about my role, about this industry. I do a lot of speaking events, and the reason is I love that part. Like, I just love when someone comes up to you and says, oh, I've never thought about this way, or like, oh, this is so helpful. Or, you write a blog post and someone says, oh, I use that and I sent it to my team. Like, it makes you feel like, okay, I'm doing this for a reason. There's a rewarding element to it. And as part of coming back, my role here was to build a team who, I get to teach them SEO, I get to teach them marketing, and you get to watch them all grow up and become really good marketers. And I love that. I think that's really fun and exciting.
So always have to ask, this comes up like every episode, in-house or agency? So
I am an agency girl, but I do have to say, like, there are benefits of being in-house. One, I think it's a lot easier. You talk to people who work at agencies. In fact, I remember when I was coming back to the agency world, and one of the guys that I know was like, oh, why would you do that? Like, why would you deal with clients? But I don't know about you guys, but I love the challenge, right? I feel like there's always new challenges. And like, when you're in-house, you're only exposed to a minimal amount of things. Whereas on the agency side, I have 10 clients. And so I'm seeing all of these different situations. Just the learning element. In this space, we have to keep up. You have to be constantly learning. And I think at the agency side, you get a little bit more exposure to that because you do have the different things. So for me, it's agency, but I certainly understand why people like being in-house.
Do you ever feel that you can't get everything you want to get done?
Oh, yeah.
Because,
yeah, right?
We have a set amount of hours where, not sure what that is, but, every client's different. But I've always been an agency. I've never been in-house. And the one thing I always dreamed about was actually being able to just sit there and like be in internal meetings and hammer home. Like, I have one client who's blocking Google, and they have been for the last 6 weeks. And their dev team's like, well, we're just trying to block like during the holidays. They're blocking extra crawlers coming to the site because their site's fragile.
Oh, it's so sad.
and I just wish I could be in those meetings every day, like showing them. And I do send reports. I just don't know if it gets to the dev team because I'm working with the marketing team and things. So sometimes I do dream about being in-house. But as you said, like, we have 10 different clients. So I just focus my time other places where I need it. But
yeah, well, and I also found that, working in-house was cool because it's like, hey, I want to do this. Okay, I'm just going to go do it. And if you have that autonomy, that's fantastic. But I was there for 3 years. And thankfully I did have 3 different websites that I was working on. But like, if you're only working on, let's say, one website, and it's not like a giant e-com site, it's just maybe it's a B2B site, whatever it is, like, there's only so much you can do. Yeah. Right? There's only so much. For me, I started to get a little bored. And it was nice because, like I said, I got exposure to these other things, but it can get a little monotonous.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I think, like you said, you're an agency girl. I think, like, I don't know what it is, but I feel like it's just bred into your personality in terms of which side of the fence you fall on. Some people tend to lean in-house. Some people tend to lean agency for different reasons. I've said many times I've been in both situations, and for whatever reason, I just tend to thrive more in the agency lifestyle, as crazy as it can get sometimes. I've been in-house a couple of times, and each time I really didn't like it. Maybe it was a function of just the particular opportunities and what was going on in-house at the time. But there have been times in my agency life where I think just like Jeff, like, man, the grass looks really, really green. It would be great just to work on one website all the time and do it really, really, really well. And then you get on the in-house side and you're like, okay, I'm working on this site, and now what do I do with the rest of my time?
Right.
But it is nice to be able to, like, have and develop close relationships with a lot of different stakeholders within the company. Like, it's nice to, for example, in my last role, I was able to just get up and walk 2 desks over and say, hey, Aaron, who was a developer, like, I'm trying to get this thing implemented, but like, I'm seeing this error, and he would fix it on the spot and go,
that's
okay,
pretty great.
That'll get pushed live tonight. And stuff like that was invaluable. And not only that, but just walking down to another floor to talk with one of the other teams and get an understanding, because they handled customers directly, and like working directly with them. I mean, there were a couple of times where we worked directly with them to actually create pieces of content.
Yeah.
Subject matter experts.
Yeah, that's like one of my favorite things. I talk about that a lot, is like when I was in-house, we talked to the customer support team every week, right? And that was so awesome, knowing here's what people are asking for, here's what they can't find, like here's what the site. Yeah, so there are those benefits.
Yeah, but like I said, I'm made for agency. I like the challenge. I like the diversity, and I feel as if the competition with other agencies, in addition to the competition with your clients and their competitors, really drives me. I come from a sports background, so I'm super competitive. And not to say that if you don't come from other backgrounds, you're not competitive, but I feel like for me, that's plays into it. So like, I like to win, and for me, agency has given me the best chance to kind of scratch that competitive itch. So,
yeah, that's exactly how I feel.
So you do public speaking. What's that like?
What's that like? Well, no, it's fun. Honestly, I don't even remember how I got into it or why. But I just know, like, once I was up there, I was like, oh yeah, this is for me. There's just something to be said about, you're being in front of your peers, and having them listen. It makes you have to up your game, right? I never, ever, ever want to go to a conference and disappoint people. And because of that, I think it's really forced me to make sure that I'm talking about the right things. I'm learning the right things. I'm focused on the things that I'm passionate about. I think that's a huge one. When I first started speaking, I talked about link building. About a year into that, I was like, if I have to talk about link building one more time, I'm going to jump off the stage. Like, I can't talk about it anymore. But I needed to find something else that I was passionate about, right? And also, you have to find something that not everyone else is saying, although there's a lot of that, right? There's a lot of that in the space. And I'm sure I've done it too, but I just love it. I love what the camaraderie of conferences. I will say that I have made some amazing friends through conferences that I go on vacation with now, that I talk to in real life, that have become close, lifelong friends, that I never would have gotten to do that without speaking. So it's just fun. I just really like it.
Do you get nervous, or are you just one of those naturals? Because like, I feel like it was, a couple of guests ago, I can't remember exactly who, if it was Alicia Anderson or Andrea Bergman, that was like, nope, I just step right up there and it's easy.
I still get nervous. Yeah. There's a moment, I'm not nervous like a day before. I'm nervous for like that 20 minutes before, but the moment that I'm on the stage, it's fine. Totally fine. Like the moment that I'm up there, your adrenaline's pumping, you're like, all right, I'm in. And you can't be nervous up there. So, but yeah, I usually don't eat before. I can't. just gotta go.
Go ahead, Jeff.
I was gonna say, I don't speak a ton, but when I do, I usually start off with a dad joke.
Win the crowd over.
To win the crowd. As soon as I can get them to laugh, then I'm like, all right, I'm good. But if they don't laugh, I'm like, oh no, I'm gonna.
Like, ooh, tough crowd.
Luckily, I'm so good, they always laugh. So.
That's right. You got the greatest dad joke.
Exactly.
Yeah, I have this thing, and it sometimes applies to speaking, but mostly singing in public, where it's literally like like you said, 20 minutes before I'm set to like go on and go on. It's not like I sing in like these massive arenas or anything. My wife and I sing at a benefit concert every.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it is cool. But even as small as the venue is, I have this thing where when I go on for about the 20 minutes before, and even sometimes as close to performing as literally like the song comes on and I'm about 3 seconds from having to open my mouth, forget all the lyrics. They just go out of my head.
Really?
Yeah. It's like a complete blackout. Make it really like scary, because like there are times when I'm standing out there and all I'm thinking is not how well I need to sing, more like, what do I say?
What am I even singing?
What am I singing? And then the music comes on, and I'm starting to panic now, like panic. Oh my God. And then finally, I remember it like it was yesterday. I opened my mouth, words came out, and they were the right words, and I went along my merry way. And for anybody that has that kind of public phobia, the idea of public speaking can be nauseating. So I guess what advice would you give to people that struggle with the idea of getting up in front of their peers?
Well, what I was going to say was, what you just talked about is just the benefit of muscle memory, right? Like we talk about practicing. I know there's people who will say like, I don't practice my presentations. I do. I run through them. Like, I try not to go word for word, but like I run through that thing 20 times because I want to know that when I get out there, that if something goes wrong, right? If I can't see my slides, if there's technical errors or whatever's going on, whether it's fear or whatever, that I still know my materials. But one of the things we do here is we start getting people, like some of the trainings that we do involve people giving presentations, right? Because you're only in front of maybe 5 people or 10 people or whatever it is. You start small. I tell anyone, who's looking to get into public speaking, look at a local event. Like I started just doing word camps that were here in Boston, events like that, or just like local SEO meetups where, people give you an opportunity, new speakers, they're expecting new speakers where they don't care if you mess up, right? Mm-hmm. Those are the things that for me, it's like, know your material and start small.
Yeah, I've done a couple, when I used to live in Philadelphia, and we had a pretty vibrant SEO meetup group there called SEO Grail, and I got to speak there a couple times. And I do small events a lot of times. I used to run a homebrew club making beer. Cool. So I would do a presentation. Yeah. It was funny when I decided to start a club, I was like, I don't want to do work after work. And I enjoyed beer, and me and my friends who started brewing were like, we want to meet other people to do it. And then we started a club, and then that grew to 300 people.
Oh my gosh.
and it was insane. Like we would just, at this one bar on a Tuesday night, would just be packed to the gills. The guy would never have any traffic on a Tuesday night before. And so it was a good time. But from there, I learned a lot of just, again, if you know your material, like if I talk about SEO or if I talk about home brewing, I don't need slides. Yeah. I can just talk about it. But yeah, when you're in front of a bunch of people, it can be scary. So, but how'd you get from like the confidence? You start off bartending, you were saying, and then now 10 years later you're in stage at MozCon. And there's many of us who've been doing SEO just as long and haven't gotten past meetup groups in that aspect. So
honestly, I've just been really lucky, like the support of the community, I would say. So even when I first started doing, I did an SMX show, and one of the benefits, I was working in-house, right? And I do think there's a benefit when you're in-house that if you're looking to speak, they're more open to having you, right?
Yeah, with a big brand behind you.
Yes, yep. And so that was really helpful. But at that show, I met a couple people, Elizabeth Osmolowski, who worked for Third Door for a really long time, Greg Finn. They're people who just became my friends, but they also were these huge support systems. And so they were encouraging me to start writing for Search Engine Land, right? So they got me doing that. They would help me with my pitches. right? So I've just been really lucky, I think, in that the people that I have surrounded myself with or gotten to know have all been so supportive. Even I was doing, I got invited to do Search Love one year in London, and a friend of mine, Aaron Friedman, who I had met through another show, like we spent the night before our sessions just practicing with one another, right? And so those kinds of things just really help. I don't know. I'm not a shy person.
Yeah.
So I think that makes the biggest difference. Is I know people in the industry will talk about, I'm very introverted or I'm very extroverted. Like I am an extrovert. I just very much am. I enjoy being around people. I like conferences. I like being in crowds. So that part I think certainly helps because, when you're just out there just being loud like I am, I guess I don't know if that helps or not, but.
Funny, my wife is exactly like that, and she is like the type of person that never met a person that she couldn't talk to and like immediately make them like her and be her friend. And I am like, I'm a nice person, but I am so the opposite, where like when I get into big crowd situations, it makes me like twitchy, uncomfortable, super uncomfortable. Which is, I then find it odd that I choose to do a podcast out there.
Where you're talking in front of people. I mean, I will say this, like, I'll be the first to say that I don't love networking events, like where you're just with a whole bunch of strangers, but like, I just psych myself up for it. So I just get mentally prepared and then you're in, I'm fine once I'm in it, but I'm like, all right.
Yeah. I mean, it was tough moving, like, I know it seems like you've moved around a little bit, but I lived in Philadelphia for 42 years and then decided to move to Atlanta and pick up the family and move. And it was really tough for my wife at first. But she is that type of person too. You can put her in a room. She starts chatting with people. And I think she's actually impressed herself with how she's like 1,000 friends now. and I'm the one sitting there going like, oh, I have a couple people I kind of talk to.
I know some people.
I'm still in like text with my friends back home, but and she's out every night. So it's interesting how just put yourself in that position and then you can like get out there. So
yeah,
you're working on it, Jeff. You'll have a few more friends.
Yeah, that's what the internet's great.
So Casie, what are some of the biggest challenges that you run into operating in the agency world?
I mean, I do think, just thinking about the team, thinking about hiring, it's so competitive right now. Especially, we're a smaller agency. There's a little under 30, a few like 30 of us. And when you're trying to hire that like 1 to 3 years person, it is like just a battle. And especially here in Boston, where there's a ton of companies and a ton of tech companies and even just a ton of agencies, right? A lot of the big digital, the big agencies, you have like Digitas and, those places who are now trying to get in the game, and they're willing to pay a lot more to have those 1 to 3 years. Like I think hiring has certainly been a challenge. We've been really lucky. Like our team is amazing. We've been able to get some really good people in. But then you have people who are constantly recruiting them away. So it's like a battle. I would say it's like such a battle right now from that perspective. But then you have clients and to Jeff's point earlier, there's only so much time, right? There's only so much time. You only have so many resources. I have a client right now that I adore. I love them to death. Unfortunately, when the search results changed in June with that big update, they weren't penalized. But what happened was the search results themselves shifted so much that they went from being in, the position 1 at the top of a page that didn't have a lot of elements to now they're in position 2, but ahead of them are now sponsored products and a map and a knowledge graph and a people also ask box. And so their traffic just tanked. And when you see that, like, it's just gut wrenching because like I'm doing everything I can to help this client, but I can't get them back there, right? Like unless those search results change, like I can't get them back there. So that stuff is just, it's so challenging and frustrating because you have these clients that you love and you want to help them. But sometimes you just have to say like, we have to change our strategy. Right. And I mean like a complete 180, like we need to change our strategy. So I think that's a tough one.
I mean, it's tougher all these days with Google putting so many other elements on the page besides just organic. And it is surprising sometimes when I still do well and there are other things on that page. But Google's tracking all that too, so they're also going to be changing those features around a lot. And I do, I think it's really important to start spreading out into other mediums, because you're going to have video links, you're going to have image links, and it's like if we don't optimize our images or maybe add videos, like those are areas we can get to. I think figuring out how to track it all is another aspect. But one of those is like there's going to be 10 listings above you that are just not organic, and how do we get into those listings too?
Right, and even like for that same client, I mean, one of the first things we did, we're like, all right, let's get like FAQ schema on the site, right? Like they have FAQs, the search results are showing FAQs, like let's get this up, let's test it, let's see what that can do. So we're really trying everything we can think of here to help with that. But sometimes, there's only so much that we can do. But yeah, I love your you have to diversify. Some people just don't want to hear that though. So
no, yeah, and it's hard to diversify, right? I mean, one reason when Jacob asked me to come onto the podcast was like it's something I always wanted to do, but I know it's a lot of work to do it, and it's like there's a whole bunch of new algorithms I got to learn, because it's like to get your a podcast to even show up, like it's one thing we're learning, right? It's like you on iTunes, we don't show up yet, but there's ones out there that haven't been talked, like they have 3 episodes and haven't been uploaded in 10 years and are like number 4. It's like why? So that's not that's not Google. I feel like if it was Google, I'd understand it more, but trying to figure out all these other algorithms. Exactly.
So when people don't want to hear it, how do you approach that? Because I feel like I've said it like 80 million times. The implementation, especially on the agency side, is our biggest problem. And then changing hearts and minds and figuring out from a psychological perspective, what can you do or say to get people to kind of come around to your understanding of a situation or the reality of the situation? How do you go about that?
I mean, one thing that I take a lot of pride in, and that, specifically here at KoMarketing, is like we have really good relationships with our clients. I have a client that I've worked with since I started here, and she's at like her 5th organization, and she just brings us with her everywhere she goes. Nice. It's so awesome. But because of those relationships, we are able to be very direct about it, right? Like one of the things that I really do pride myself in is I'm never going to lie to my clients, right? So like that example that I told you where search results shifted, I said like, look, we can keep trying to get back. We can keep trying to get back for this keyword all you want, but unless this changes, there's nothing that we're going to be able to do. But here's the data that shows here are the other things that we can do, right? So in fact, one of the girls who works here put together this sheet yesterday, this data set for this client that specifically looks at their competitors. We've been trying to get them to do a couple things. They've been a little bit hesitant to do it. She pulled all this data, this competitive data, search volume data, like potential revenue data, that now we take that and we present to them, like, here's the actual financial impact of doing this. And I think that helps. I mean, the one thing I always tell people, I'm like, just show them competition, just show them their competitors, right? Like, especially when you're talking to the C-suite, if you show them, like, here's what your competitors are doing, they absolutely are always like, well, why aren't we doing that? So I do think that helps, is, just being honest and direct, using the data you have. And, if you can get buy-in from the upper level, that goes such a long way.
Do you find that they believe their data or the data that you provide them?
I do. But the one thing I do like is I think our clients are very smart. That's actually something that's changed. This is going to come out wrong. That's coming out wrong.
Just like I wanted to rewind the early.
Yeah. But like the one thing that has definitely shifted over the past, 7 years, specifically from me being here, is our contacts weren't always search savvy. And now they are much more savvy when it comes to understanding SEO, paid search, whatever it is. So our clients, not only they will question the data if it's wrong or if they have questions, but they understand it. And I think that is really, really helpful.
What do you think has led to that higher degree of understanding?
I mean, I think just SEO is so much more well known, right? I mean, there's still people who don't necessarily know, but 10 years ago, it was like this little thing that maybe someone did and it was such a niche, whereas now it's a thing that they teach in college, which is amazing. But I think there's just so much more awareness of it and people who need to understand it.
Do you guys ever even 5 years ago, I had never once in like a traditional medium heard anybody like refer to SEO. So it was like the thing that I do for my living is like this super secret sort of thing to the public. And now like I'm driving around and I'm listening I'm in Columbus, so it's 97.1 The Fan, my sports radio. And when you start to get the commercials and the ads, there are companies advertising SEO services. And I'm like, holy crap, this is becoming a little bit more mainstream. Whereas 5 years ago, like, no, you never saw it. Even today, I'm upstairs and I've got a TV that can play the YouTube. And a YouTube ad came on and it was for a digital marketing and SEO company. And I was like, well, about a year ago, I didn't see much of that going on. So you're right. It is becoming a little bit more
people know what we do. It was on Jeopardy. SEO is on Jeopardy. We've made it.
Yeah.
Yes,
one of my favorite podcasts is Radiolab, and for the last 2 months or 3 months, they've been brought to you by Wix.
Oh, boy.
And all they're talking about is Wix's SEO capabilities. Yeah. And I'm just like, oh, this is my favorite podcast. Like their whole podcast is about like breaking things down. I wish they like broke their advertising a little bit to find out that it's going down.
Wix just shelled out $25,000 to Marie Haynes Consulting and like for winning the Wix SEO contest. And like I was like, holy shit! If I didn't known there was 25 grand on the line, I would have been like, all right, I'm in. Let me get in there. But
I appreciate it that it goes to someone like her though, who actually knows what she's doing, right? That, I think she made a comment today, like, she had 8 people working on it for 6 months or something like, but you see someone, it's like, okay, this is a person that I know is smart. I know knows what they're doing, like better than some, shady person.
Yeah. Well, when they ran the competition last year, I with Patrick Stocks, it came down to between him and someone else, and there was a lot of shady stuff going on some of those people where tons of links were being bought, and that was part of the rules. Like, you couldn't buy links. So I know, I don't think Patrick was. I think the guy who won was.
I think the other guy did. Yeah.
Yeah, and it is an interesting thing. I give Wix credit because SEOs love like that battle. Again, we're competitive, so putting that out there
on it too.
Totally. Like, if we're not in it, we're crapping on it. So.
I couldn't believe the size of the pot, though, man. I was like, no, they're serious about this. 25 G's, cool, man. So Jeff, let's move to the next segment. What's in the news? Let's get to the drama.
Yes, more Twitter drama. So there was a post by. I think I'm going to probably announce it. We'll just say Holly because it's her name on there. But I think
girl ziplocked.
Yeah, girl ziplocked. But she pretty much came out and was saying the first 2 pages of Google never surface any personal blogs or personal websites anymore. And everything that's worthwhile, like a question you look at, it's just being optimized bunch of SEO assholes. And that was her word she used, and I thought it was awesome. But at the same time, there was as us SEO assholes, we're kind of going out and saying there was a lot of different posts out there. So I know someone like Joe Hall kind of was like, some of us aren't assholes, and we took the time to learn the algorithms and did stuff. And I think there was just a lot of battle going back and forth between someone who's not so familiar with SEO. And I could see, like you type in anything, and not anything, but anything that's like probably a broader keyword, and you're going to have a major company show up for it, especially if it's like something that you're trying to sell. If you're typing in iPhone or something like that, like you're going to get a big brand, whether it's Apple or Best Buy or somebody there. And yes, they all have SEOs working for them. But it was, the outrage was kind of interesting with it, where, John Mueller posted about it. Like he wanted to know what people thought. You know, you got all the big name SEO guys out there, Bill Slawski. You know, it was an interesting conversation. I don't know what your take was on it, Jake, but it was really an interesting kind of post between it, because I really feel that, yes, there's big brands out there. I think I understand why there's big brands out there. I don't think it's anything. It could be. It's not shady. It's like we are trying to optimize for that. I do feel like there are some bad SEOs out there, and they probably are doing bad things. But overall, we're all trying to make our clients' site more for the customers, and that's why Google's showing them over other people. And that's kind of what I feel that's going on. But I get her pain. Why she's like, if you don't know that and you're just a blogger and you wonder why your blog's lost half its traffic, or isn't getting the traffic it needs, like, of course, you're just going to blame the people who specialize in that. So,
I mean, at the same time, though, if you're just realizing this, like, you're so behind. That's why you're not showing up anymore, right? I mean, this started changing how many years ago? I personally don't have any patience for that stuff. Like, I just don't. I just don't. Like, one, I try to stay out of the SEO drama. It's just like, again, other things that I'd like to do. And usually it's just people, I think sometimes people just like to argue. But I do think, and one of the things I do love about the SEO space and the people in it is that people are very protective of it, right? And it goes back to what we were just talking about, where 5 years ago, people maybe didn't know as much about SEO as they did. So I do think people are very protective of the community as a whole, protective of what we do, because we've always had to be a little bit defensive about it. Because let's be real, like, when I started, the shit that we were doing was not was shady, right? You're just buying links and doing things, and it worked, and it was awesome. And you know, there are people who are still figuring out how to game the system. And at the end of the day, like, yes, like, we're not, personally, it's not like I'm over here doing anything shady, but I am working really hard to, in a sense, game that algorithm, right? Yeah. I want my client site there. And so what does that mean? Well, it means you have to have a brand presence, and it means you need to have content. And, you know, these personal blogs don't necessarily have that. So maybe they shouldn't show up. Right. And what are you trying to show up for? So I don't know. I could show them, like, I didn't want to get into it because I'm anti-drama myself, but I could show her where there's personal blogs beating some of my clients that are driving me nuts. Yes. Well, and it goes to the sense of diversification, exactly what we were just talking about. You know, for people who maybe you don't have a big brand, like, you need to be looking at, you know, social or whatever it is, or Medium or these other platforms where you can gain visibility. Because, I mean, even for some of my clients, I'm like, look, I don't know how much time you have left in Google here, right? Like, time is limited for a lot of us. So, you know, whether you're a blog or not, I don't know. I mean, people just have things to complain about.
What I find interesting about this is, like, just like you guys said, there are certain queries, like, across some of my clients where, like, half of the results are product pages and half of the results are articles, blog articles, resource articles, things like that. And as an SEO, it's like, it's really interesting to try to figure out what Google thinks the real intent is. Is it informational? Is it transactional? But I would say, to, like, the first comment about how, like, okay, Google almost never surfaces blogs and personal websites. And my Google Pixel is going off as I'm saying this, so I'm just going to stop that. Always listening, Google. It's just factually inaccurate, and I hate to rail on this particular person. I don't know what search that they were doing, but, like, honestly, the last place I worked, like, we grew our traffic in about a year by like 100%, and almost all of it was like, it was
with your blog.
Yeah, and that brought in a lot of business. So, like, there's that. The second part of this is the kind of more kerfuffle, where, like, okay, well, just because there are people online that optimize things to show up, we're all assholes. Well, let me tell you something. Like, I feel like there are some, because there are two sides of the fence. On one side of the fence, you've got people, and I think rightfully so, defending the industry and the people in it as not all assholes. Okay, and that's true. Like, we're not all assholes, but there are some assholes. It's just like any other place on earth. There are assholes and there are not assholes in any profession ever.
And let's be real. There's people that are in this industry that I like very much, but they're still assholes.
Yeah.
Right.
You know?
There's even that. But then there are people on the other side of the fence. And this is where I feel like, for me, in terms of my opinion, because I believe that when we're all being generalized as assholes, we have a right to push back. But there are people on the other side of the fence, and I don't understand it quite as much, and I'm trying really hard, that in one case, like Tom Rayner, who was a previous guest on this show and sometimes has some opinions on this type of stuff, basically getting upset at the people for defending the industry and pushing back on this type of stuff. And there were other people saying, hey, you're missing the point. You're missing the point. And I agree. Like, okay, what's great about this country is that people are allowed to have opinions, and there is freedom of speech, and that's awesome. But there's not freedom from accountability, right? You have the right to say whatever the hell you want, and so do other people. And you mentioned earlier that Twitter is great for Twitter wouldn't exist if people didn't argue.
Yeah, absolutely.
So anyways. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Anyway, so let's move on.
We can talk about this all day.
Yeah.
Let's quickly, let's get into kind of the team building. Want to be respectful of time. So let's jump into the team building component and deep dive on that really quickly. So Casie, how do you build a good SEO team?
Yeah. So this was something that I was asking, 5 years ago, 6 years ago. Like I said, when I came back to KoMarketing, there were probably about 8 or 9 people that were here at the time. And, we were growing. And I realized that once you hit that 10 to 12 mark, you need things like processes, which I hate, but I was like, oh God, all right, we need to do some things. Like, how do we actually make this scalable? And so I started talking to just different people in the industry about how they have grown their teams. I was talking to Will Scott, talking to Mike Arneson about what they do for training, and just thinking what these people were telling me. I was like, okay, what we actually have to do is give people the tools that are going to make them successful, but also you have to give them the process to lead them there. And I think that's something that I struggled with a little bit. Because I just don't love having to tell people to do something a certain way. Because especially with search, there's so many nuances, and I see people who are like, okay, well, you told me that I have to have 60 characters. And so I have 60, and I'm like, oh no.
I just had somebody today ask me how important the little green bubble is in the Yoast SEO plugin when they
Yeah, that stuff's hard. Right. So you have to consider all that. But I mean, one of the things that we realized is, one, you just have to, we start people slow, but we also give them we give them templates for things, and we give them the tools they need, and we give them the information they need. And, now we have managers who are helping, and there's people above them we're guiding them through the process, especially people who they don't have any experience with SEO, right? They don't know what it is. So I would also say the one thing that we have certainly changed is focusing on the user. And that's one thing that I tell people, the team now, especially new people, when it comes to things like keywords, is I always tell them, think about the user first. And that's something that I feel like has changed. But you have to really think through all of the nuances that come with search, and that's tricky. But I think when you're building your team, you learn it as you go. I'm still learning new things every day.
Yeah, it's funny. I always tell, everyone has different ways of doing things, right? And
right.
When it comes to title tags, I'm kind of the anti pipe between keyword pipe, and just I'd rather it read something better. And at the end, it's not even I don't like pipe client. I like buy client or something. Some sort of read, it's like get new Nike sneakers by, from whoever. And it's, and just little things like that where getting people in brand new in SEO and they read a lot of articles, you just end up seeing it like way more robotic than it needs to be.
Yeah.
I know Jake's working on a lot of training stuff at our work, and it's tough to get the full gamut of everything you do in there. So we're trying to build like a slow kind of library of videos, and that when someone who comes in, they can go through them.
That's a great idea.
But I think just the relationships between senior people and junior people is where I think a lot of the team building needs to come from. So
yeah, and I mean, even thinking about like how we're starting them. So like we don't just immediately drop someone into like doing keyword research, for example. But what we might have them do is optimize a page, which forces them to figure out like, how do I find the right keywords, and how do I make sure that I'm whatever I'm changing still relates to the user, but it also forces them to go look at search results. So, kind of easing them into all of the elements before saying like, all right, like I'm going to have you go do this full scope of keyword research or whatever it might be.
How do you, when you're bringing people into the team, right, there's just like in sports, right, there's the X's and O's, right, but then there's also an element that's a little bit more undefinable called chemistry, right, and fit. Within the team structure. So when you're bringing people in, and it doesn't just have to be intro people, it can be mid-level and senior people. What are the characteristics of a person that you look for in terms of that person's fit as you're constructing your team?
Yeah, as an organization, we sat down about 2 years ago and tried to answer that question. Because we really wanted to take hiring. We really take it seriously because, again, we're a small team. So the people that you're hiring, you're putting a lot of investment into that person. And what we figured out is the people that we're looking for, they have to be self-motivated. I think that's the biggest thing is like, we don't have time. I don't have time to micromanage people. And also, who likes that? Like nobody, right? Like nobody likes that. So there has to be an element of being self-motivated. And in this industry where things change, like we're talking about, you have to be curious, right? You have to go figure out, oh, well, I looked at this search result yesterday and now I'm seeing something different. Like why? Or like last week, my client was here and now they're not. Why? So I think between being self-motivated and curious, those are such like key elements for us. And the desire to learn is a big one, a really big one. So I love when we interview someone, excuse me. I love when we interview someone and they say, well, I've been doing this, but I'm really interested in this. So, I went and took like the Google Analytics test because I wanted to learn about it, right? Or I went and looked at HubSpot's X because I wanted to learn about it. That's the stuff that really intrigues me. And I'm like, all right, this person's going to be a good fit.
So are there ever, and I want to be, we're running out of time, so I'm trying to squeeze in questions. Are there ever people that check those boxes, but then come in and still aren't a culture fit? And how do you figure that part out?
We haven't had that. Honestly, we've been so lucky. I know. But we do, like when the people come in, like we work in an open office, right? And I'm very just apparent, like the questions that we ask are, the questions I ask are, what type of environment are you looking for? How do you like to be managed? How do you learn? What is your dream job? Those questions they can give you a lot of insights into that. But we also will have, like, it's not just the leadership team who's interviewing these people. We have their peers come in and talk to them. We have, middle managers come in and talk to them. So, at the end, we're all deciding, does this person seem like a fit? And I think that helps. Okay. We've had like one, maybe there's like one person. So we've been lucky, I guess.
Awesome. So if, you went out, got a couple drinks and you're talking to the bartender and the bartender says, hey, I want to follow in the same footsteps that you did. I want to get into SEO. What kind of advice would you give them to go, like, come from bartender, waitress, or, any type of job into the SEO world?
I tell people all the time, build a website. even though they're not showing up in search results. Start playing around with WordPress. I think WordPress is the easiest place to start. But just building your own site, I think that's your best test environment. You're never going to learn more. That's how, I didn't know HTML when I was coming out of school. I just started playing around with it. I started building my own websites. I got HTML for Dummies. I bought SEO for Dummies. Yeah, see? You learn this stuff by doing it. And that's never, and that goes back to the start of our conversation about being at an agency where you have these different places to play and explore. And I would say just go, and I tell the team here, if you want to learn, people are like, oh, I want to learn HTML. You can. It's not really that hard. There's plenty of places to do these things, but go start playing around. And read. I read an hour every day still. I pay attention to what's whether it's on Twitter, whether it's on my Feedly feeds. I still read every single day to learn what else is new.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Reading is a very important and underrated skill in this industry.
Yes.
Well, Casie, know you're running out of time and have a hard stop. Wanted to thank you so much for coming on. Where can people find you?
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was fun. You can find me on Twitter at Casie G. You can find me, I always say this, on LinkedIn. I'm never on LinkedIn. Don't find me there. Find me at KoMarketing.com.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for coming on, and I know our audience will love your episode. It was a great discussion.
Cool. Thanks. It was good to talk to you guys.
Thank you.
Good to talk to you.
Thank you so much for listening to the Page 2 podcast. If you'd like to find out more about the show or listen to more episodes, visit us at page2podcast.fm. That's page, 2, podcast.fm. Our episodes are also available on a number of other platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Breaker, Deezer, Overcast, Pocket Cast, Stitcher, TuneIn, and more. Additionally, you can also listen to our show on our new YouTube channel. If you'd like to become a sponsor or would like to be interviewed, get in touch with us at thepage2podcast@gmail.com. Until next time, happy optimizing.